I guarantee nothing, and I will never promise you, and I will never lie to you about something that I know anything about. I offer rational, thoughtful leadership and an opportunity to make things better, and I hope that's a commodity that people are interested. I hope brutal honesty and good discussion is something that people are interested in.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Den. I am Eric Whitener, your host, broker owner of the Knox Real Estate Group, and today our special guest is Larsen J., County Commissioner at Large. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you're here. So I just want to jump right into it. One thing I've been learning about doing this podcast is there's no sense in like a lot of small talk. So I want to just start off. You're County Commissioner at Large. For somebody out there who might not know what that is.
Yeah, it's really, in a basic sense, it means I represent everyone in Knox County. So Knox County is divided, our legislative side, which is our governing side, is broken into 9 districts. Each district has about 55,000 people in it. You're currently in the 5th district right here. And then there are 2 members of our legislative body that are the at-large members, and we represent everyone. So from Coreyton to Farragut, from Halls to South Knoxville and Lonsdale to Hardin Valley, I have 500,000 bosses every single day.
Well, so that's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah.
So what does that look like? What does a county commissioner do versus an at-large county commissioner? What's the difference?
It's the same job as a sense. I mean, we are one of 11 people. I always tell people, you as a Knox County resident, you are a shareholder in a $1 billion public corporation. And whether you knew it or not, you own this thing. It is a public corporation, and we're like the board of directors. So just like we have on the federal level, you have an executive branch, which is our county mayor, and then you have a legislative branch on a federal level. It might be the House and the Senate, but we don't have 2 different bodies, so we just have one. So our county commissioners, there's 11 of us, 9 districts, 2 at large. We all have the same job. We all have 1 vote. There's nothing that's different about who we are other than who we represent and what our districts are versus, what our role is. But we, pass local laws, local housing and land use policies. We figure out how to spend your tax dollars. We do all kinds of local ordinances and regulations and things like that. So we're kind of like the local government here.
So,
and then, of course, within that is the city of Knoxville and the town of Farragut. So we have 3 governments within Knox County. We have a city mayor and a city council. We have a town of Farragut mayor and aldermen, and then we have, of course, everyone lives. I always ask people, do you live in the county part of the county, the city part of the county, or the Farragut part of the county? Because everybody lives in the county.
Well, and sometimes I bet you might get incorrect answers, because I know a lot of people think they live in Farragut that don't actually live in Farragut.
Yeah, and so a lot of times what we have to do is decide when somebody contacts us, are they, what jurisdiction is. It could be a state or federal jurisdiction. It could be a Farragut jurisdiction. It could be a city or a county. And so there's lots of layers to a pretty big, system.
So what do people normally reach out to you for? Like what's it?
I love the calls that are, what do you, I don't know who to go to. Where do I start? A lot of information traffic cop of like, I'm not exactly sure even where to begin or who to talk to. Or I don't know if you can help, but I've got this really big issue. Sometimes it could be a really small issue in my sense of the bigger picture.
Right.
But to them, it's like, their blocked culvert is the biggest thing because it floods their yard, and that's a major issue, but it's easy to fix. Most things we can solve. I mean, we're a service company as a government. Our job is to serve the community and to, enforce laws and to, kind of keep a general glue between the community. But, it's a lot of just, I don't know who to talk to, where do I go, or how do I address this issue, or is this an issue you can handle? So it's a lot of that sort of navigating all the time, which means you've got to have a really good relationship with all the different department heads and the different, different parts of our government and our vendors to really understand, okay, is this an ambulance issue? Okay, I'm going to go talk to that person. Is this a road issue? I'm going to go talk to that person. Is this a health issue? So it's a lot of navigating.
So you're in your 2nd term.
Mm-hmm.
What have been some? So backing that up a little bit.
Yeah, 2018 I was elected. 2022 reelected.
So you through COVID,
a whole bit.
Through like a massive migration of people. What have been some of the, the biggest challenges you've kind of dealt with that you've seen?
Well, I think certainly going through the pandemic, that was a big challenge for everybody. I don't care what and who you were and what case. Everybody had a different impact and a perspective. The growth that we're having right now is a huge challenge. We're doing our best to try to address it, but we also didn't have any updated plans for growth for 20 or 30 years, and so trying to catch up with kind of what was neglected and get ready for the future, that's been a big pinch point. And then just the growing cost of goods and services, and what our pricing model looks like, and how do we balance that. It's a constant financial pressure as well. And then every month in commission, some months are very quiet, some months like the world's on fire, and it's a roller coaster. So I try not to sort of worry about the parts that are really stressful or the parts that are really great, because it's going to change like tomorrow. So you just ebb and flow as best you can, and who knows what the world's going to look like tomorrow. You just do your best.
This is true. It's one thing I've definitely, I felt like we've experienced. You realize that time pre-COVID seemed to be honestly really calm. I know there was growth. I know there was things going on, but ever since 2020, I feel like every year it's like, okay, what's going to be the challenge this year? And I've it just, especially in our industry, we've seen a lot of whiplash, super hot market, crazy interest rates, crazy lawsuit, rule changes, all sorts of stuff. So like massive changes in our industry.
Yeah. And will continue to be.
And will continue to be. And that's where I'm just like, I'm just now kind of realizing like, no matter what, we'll figure it out. We'll move forward. At the end of the day, people just need to buy and sell houses, and we're here to help them with that.
Yeah.
And same thing on your end. People need to live their day-to-day lives.
Yeah. And what's amazing to me is like 99% of the time it works.
Yeah.
And we don't pay attention to it.
Right.
I mean, I'm still amazed every day. People come and go to work. People come and go to school. People live their lives. They start businesses. They run that. They exchange goods and services. They go out. They have dinner. Our society works 99% of the time really well, and it's amazing because everybody kind of follows the rules and works together and gets along. And of course, every once in a while it doesn't, and that's what sort of everyone pays attention to. But if they just paid attention to the 99% of the time that it actually did work, they wouldn't worry so much about the time when they had to spend 10 more minutes in traffic, or this one hot issue, took over, every bit of their lives. It's, perspective.
So speaking of perspective, so something that I've noticed a lot, I tune in a lot to what happens here locally in the town of Farragut. I assume that a lot of that sentiment that we've seen here is countywide. People moved here. Pre-COVID. I mean, people have been coming for a while.
They've been moving here since the 70s.
Yeah. But they came here for certain things. More of a relaxed living, less traffic. Obviously, like low taxes, like all the benefits that we've had. But then when a lot of people move here, we end up with things like more traffic. Less. Longer lines at the store, whatever. And now I'm seeing people push back on growth. Used to be growth was a good thing. That meant more jobs. That meant, more stuff. Now we're seeing, I feel like I'm seeing more and more people that don't want that development. I definitely don't want that apartment complex. Are you seeing that on your end?
Yeah, and I think it's exacerbated in different parts of the county different ways. I mean, there are certain areas that are growing faster than other parts. So this same sentiment doesn't happen in Coreyton as much as it does here, but it is still there because that's changing too.
Right.
And every community is in Knox County. We have 18 or 19 sort of unique communities, and they're all changing in some way, shape, and form. It is interesting because some of the people pushing back on that are ones that just moved here within the last 3 to 5 years.
I've seen a lot of that.
And I'm like, wait, you're caused your own issue, and now you're complaining about the next person's issue. So it's a little disingenuous to me, and to think that, to think that a place that you move to for all of these reasons is going to stay exactly that way forever and ever and ever is just unrealistic.
Correct.
I think growth is good. If your business is not growing, then you're only doing two things: dying or out of business. And so, to me, if I asked you, would you rather have your real estate company grow or die? You would say grow, and you would manage that with personnel, with equipment, with signs, with listings, with a person, HR. I mean, like you would adjust as best you can because the plus side of that is better than the downside of that.
And it's funny you said it that way because one of my early jobs, my boss, he said that about. It was actually Averitt Express. When I lived in North Carolina, I worked for Averitt Express, and I'm a terminal manager. He said, the goal is always to grow. He says, because if you're not growing, you're dying. I mean, 100%. He said it exactly like 100%.
That. And always stuck with me. Communities are no different. Cities and metropolitan areas are no different. Townships are no different. You have a choice. I mean, I always think of it this way. Water goes where water wants to go. And when a flood happens, it will go to the area of least resistance to the lowest level with the flattest area.
Right.
You can channel it, you can harness it, you can use it, you can embrace it, you can figure it out, or you can sit there and wait until you're flooded and go, why did it happen? And so to me, I just think there's a constantly proactive approach to say this is a good thing. Cedar Bluff 30 years ago was a farmland. Farragut didn't exist, until the 70s. The plus side of that and the way of life we have is always gotten better. Now, is it getting more saturated? Yes. Are people noticing it more? Probably. But at the end of the day, it's perspective. If you've ever spent any time in any other city, we don't have a lot of traffic like they have. So
I agree.
Let's have a little perspective. But we've also shifted the way we live. And so I think we have to talk about that. As little as 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, people still used to have their children ride the bus to school. And now that has shifted to a majority of people take their one child or their two children in their one car at the exact same time. And so we didn't build for that.
Yeah.
And it builds up and it backs up. And we didn't build for that. So now we have to adapt. But to me, I think growth is an opportunity to constantly adapt and make things better. But change is hard. I get it. This is the thing we deal with 24/7 as commissioners, as elected officials. There's three types of people. I heard this from the mayor of Oklahoma City. He said there's the person who says, I like change, and when you change something, they really don't like change. There's somebody who says, I don't like change, and when you change something, I really don't like change, and they come after you with the pitchforks.
Yeah.
And then somebody who says, I love change, and when you change something, they say, great job, I'm really appreciative. So the problem is I've never met the third person. Change is hard, and change is difficult because it feels like loss. It feels uncomfortable. We don't sort of take a breath and say, okay, is it going to be okay that I waited 5 more minutes in traffic? Yeah, it's going to be, like, life is not going to come to an end. But it's hard because people see, I live in my neighborhood and it's perfect and I don't want anything to change. Well, that field has been there next to me for 30 years. Wait, you're going to put another neighborhood just like mine over there?
Right.
That feels weird because I don't like that. But I'm in mine.
Right. Well, and if you're the person who bought right up against that, you've had the luxury of utilizing the view of that property for all those years, and now somebody's going to take that away.
Just like the house that you built, and the guy that was behind you.
And the thing is that was a benefit for a while. It was a benefit, but it was never guaranteed.
And that's the rub. The rub is we are growing whether we like it or not. How do we harness it? And then how do we have a discussion with the citizenry as a whole to say, let's talk about what this looks like, and then let's talk about what we can do to manage it.
Well, and I feel like there's always the general public sees something happen, like, hey, we're going to do something that's going to be really cool. I like to use Costco as an example a lot because, Farragut is billed as a small town. And I'm like, but there are no small towns with Costco.
No.
We're
not a small town anymore.
No, we're not. I mean, no, but it's that's what everybody's like. We're supposed to be the small town. I'm like, we butt up to Turkey Creek. We have a Costco. Just having that Costco. Now, the benefit is I can literally just go down the street and get practically anything I want. Right? I mean, we have the most convenient spot here. The downside is people drive from all over East Tennessee to get to this Costco.
But the benefit is every time they spend money there, it funds the town of Farragut. So you can't complain about the thing that you like.
I know that's what I'm saying. Like it's
Yeah.
this catch-22 kind of deal, and it's like, well, what did one expect was going to happen?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, everybody wants
Yeah.
a Costco in their area, because of all the benefits of having a Costco. I mean, that's like the main place I go to get gas. I go to Costco.
I go to Costco to get gas
gas.
too, and it is a great convenience, and it is a great asset for the town of Farragut.
But it also changes the landscape.
100%.
And so like.
So where do you weigh that? I mean, you are welcome to being a commissioner. Would you like to sign up? This is what we do every day: is how do we weigh decisions, but for the greater good, with some things that may be inconveniencing or struggling with growth. How do we make those decisions knowing that the benefit of the convenience to the livelihoods of people and the financial impact it has on a community might outweigh some more traffic?
So
that's the balancing.
On top of that, I'm going to ask you a question because you've been in this role now for
this is my 6th year. Yeah.
I hear grumblings, especially when there's a new development. They see these land use change plan. Those signs that go out. Everybody's like, oh, and most people don't pay attention until like it's too late.
Yeah, until a bulldozer shows up or something.
But there are limitations to what can and cannot be. I mean, if somebody has a legal right to do something with their property, county commissioner can't come in and be like, we're not going to allow that, right?
Yeah, we have laws. We are a nation of law. Let's start that. And those laws apply to everyone, whether you like them or not, and you can change them if you don't like them. That's our baseline. We also are a nation built on the fundamental principle of property rights, in which you have a right to your land and you have a right to use your land in a way that the community as a whole has deemed it appropriate. So you can't put a amusement park. You couldn't turn that farm in Farragut into Dollywood, right? Because there's certain zoning and there's certain areas we've designated for housing, for commerce, et cetera. So there's some laws, and we just went through the Advance Knox process, which updated that vision for like first time in 30 years. We've actually said this is what our future growth might look like and where we want to grow and how. But yeah, if someone has a right to that land, it is the most difficult thing because everyone wants you to. This is the universal rule in zoning. Don't tell me what to do with my land, but I really want you to tell my neighbor what to do with his.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way. You are guaranteed your property rights. You're not guaranteed your property view. Period.
Yeah.
You are guaranteed that you have the same rights as everyone else as long as you follow the law. And it is difficult and it's emotional and it's hard because and what's always very interesting is it's very often the pushback comes from people who live in the neighborhood right next door and you're like, but your neighborhood was a farm. You were okay buying and building, but you don't want somebody else to have the same rights as you. And it doesn't work that way. That's not how our nation is built. So that is the struggle, but it's a constant like communication of, you can buy it and keep it a farm. All 100 neighbors can go in and buy that and keep it a field. You have every right to do that too.
And that's something that has been brought up. I've had Vice Mayor Pavlin on here. Even when I talked to John Cook with Cook Bros, that ability has always been there. Nobody's probably ever going to do that.
It's happened.
But
it's pretty rare.
It's pretty rare, yeah. So, but the fact of the matter is that, somebody who owns land, for whatever reasons decides they want to sell it, they should be able to do that and get it for the highest and best use of that.
And that's the part, that's actually the part that it hurts me when people don't take that perspective. There is someone who has owned and worked that land for 50 or 70 years. And that may be the key to their health care, their retirement, their senior living, their grandchild going to college. They have a right to benefit from the work they have done for their lifetime.
Yeah.
As much as the next person has a right to buy, build, and make a profit out of that too. I mean, we have businesses to make a profit. You don't operate a business to lose a profit.
No,
And so if you don't make a profit,
I am not the United Way.
correct. I mean, it doesn't work. So it's one of those things where, people are like, the greedy developers. I'm like, there's only two types of houses ever. Well, three. One you build yourself, one a developer or builder builds, or one the government builds. That's it. We don't, and the ones that we build, you don't really want
Yeah.
in your neighborhood probably.
No.
So we need builders. We need them to do it. And I'm not the taste police as a commissioner. My job is not to say whether I like it or not, whether it looks good or not, whether I would live there or not. My job is to say, what is the law? Have you applied for it? Does it fit the rules and regulations? And do you have a right to proceed with it? I'm an impartial referee. I can't say, well, I don't like houses that are that close together. You might.
Right.
Go for it.
Right. Well, and there's definitely
Have a right to live.
So one thing that I've noticed, especially in some of the other counties, Loudoun specifically,
Yeah.
got rid of planned unit developments, which took a lot of options off the table.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think where that'll impact
It's
is,
going to put a lot of pressure on us.
yeah, well, it is, and it's also gonna down the road. I think they're gonna see that as a big mistake because they're not building other products. You have to have diversity in housing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because not everything can be a neighborhood of single family homes, first time home buyers and your elderly. They need places to go.
That's the biggest issue that no one's paying attention to. In the next 20 years, 1 out of every 5 Knox County seniors will be over the age of 65.
And they're
We are not developing housing for seniors, not nursing homes and medical facilities.
no, just lifestyles type homes.
Correct. And it's going to be a huge pinch.
And I'm going to add to that. My prediction is I think that this region becomes a hotspot for retirees in the future.
It already is.
Florida's getting tapped out with costs in insurance and all of the hurricanes. You start adding all this stuff. People are going to move more and more to this region for the stability that our weather gives them, for our low tax structure, our reasonable cost of living. Even though people say, well, our housing costs have gone up so much, and they have, but when you balance that compared to everything else, we're still super affordable.
Yeah, it's still very much below the national average. It is going to be an area that is growing in our retirees. We are not building the inventory that is necessary, and I keep pushing our building community to say, please, you need maintenance-free small condos that are stacked together, that seniors can come together and build neighborhoods and communities together and look after themselves and have a great place to live without a whole lot of overhead.
I agree.
100%.
Do you feel that the Advance Knox Plan addresses some of that?
It does. It addresses that. It also addresses the diversity of housing, as you said, to find different types of things in different places in different ways. And we do, especially along our major corridors. We have to have condos and townhouses and apartments and mixed use development and retail. Right here in the heart of Farragut is a perfect example of where people can live, people can shop, people can, have health care or get their nails done at the same time that they can have education across the street and have a community in which they don't always have to get in their car to go somewhere.
Right.
Like, those mixed use town developments are exactly what the process and what people told us they wanted. And you're seeing, we have a big one up in Belltown, up in the Powell community. We're going to have another one in East. You're going to see more and more of the sort of developments that have apartments, townhomes, multifamily, single family, all kind of wrapped together with some services and some amenities.
And ideally, especially with it being new development, when you have these new developments in the other parts of town, that would take, I think, a lot of stress off of areas such as this area, because people will have some of that shopping nearby. They'll have those restaurants, they'll have those amenities that they desire close by. And the plan makes sense to me. Yeah. Like I like that idea.
Thank you for reading it. Most people don't know we have a plan, much less what's in it. But that's what our job too is, also to communicate, because I know lives are busy and it's in the weeds, so I get that.
Well, the unfortunate thing, prior to, like you said, we hadn't had a plan.
Yeah.
And
it was 22 years outdated.
and without a plan, like
Any road will do, and it.
yeah, you know. So definitely, I think that's a great step forward, and I'm sure, you know, plans do they change some.
Sure.
They you know, so as things happen, I know that there'll be, you know, some changes to that, but
But look at the growth. I mean, this is something I just think people need to understand. If you just look at an I mean, you can go to KGIS and look at the overlay of maps from the 40s. The heart of the city was the heart of the city, and then it grew west. And again, 30 years ago, Cedar Bluff was farmland, and it grew west and it grew west, and the town of Farragut was established, and it's fairly well saturated itself through that area, and then the growth jumped to Hardin Valley. And now the growth is continuing in Hardin Valley and kind of creeping back towards Carnes and Powell.
right.
Halls is hard to get to because it's isolated by kind of two mountain ranges, so that it's going to skip over that to some extent. And then the growth is going to go east because that's where land is and that's where water flows, right?
Right.
And I think Strawberry Plains will look like Cedar Bluff in 30 years, and
don't
the
doubt it.
corridor between here and 407 along that interstate corridor will be between Farragut and downtown will be downtown to 407. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. Now, if you want Knoxville to never change and Knox County to never change from this current snapshot, it's going to be a bad thing. It's going to feel like it's changing. But at the same time, if you're embracing growth and you're finding ways to channel it along our major corridors, then the rural areas will remain rural and the urban areas will remain urban, and we'll be able to harness that growth in an effective way.
Well, and that's what, you know, I tell a lot of people, like, what's cool about where we're at right here is I have everything I need within 5 minutes.
Sure.
Right. But if I hop in my car, 30 minutes later, I'm in the mountains. You know, like you can be literally in farm country in no time at all, or be out on the boat on the lake. Like there's just so many things to do and not feel like you're in the city, even though this very much is city.
Sure, and that ability again. Let's go back to that perspective, which I love so much. We have traffic twice a day, 7:30 to 9:30, 4:30 to 6:30.
Yeah.
You know that.
And anytime a semi blows a tire.
But like the rest of the time, things move pretty well.
Yeah.
Right, except for game day, which everybody just goes, it's game day, right?
Right.
You're at the crossroads of the country, right here in Knoxville. 81 and 75 go from Canada and the Northeast right through here and all the way to Florida to the Keys.
Yeah.
I-40 starts right here and goes all the way to California. Half of the country's population lives within 500 miles of this spot we're sitting in right now. We are the crossroads of the country. We are the crossroads of the country.
Yeah.
And we have an ability to so quickly be everywhere or nowhere all at the same time. And I think that's magical because we have an opportunity to live, work, and play in a way that no one else can in the rest of this country. Now, it's different. Everybody loves their community in different places, but like we have a unique formula, and part of it is geographic, part of it is logistical, part of it is, you know, our commerce and our housing stability and our work stability. I mean, like when the world is going crazy, we kind of chill. When the world is going downhill, we're kind of chill.
Yeah.
Like it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
But if we gotta focus on the good things about where we live and not just the things that we're gripey about, you know.
Well, I agree, and I think a big part of that, you know, it's one thing people get stuck in the past, and sometimes we like to we're romanticize. We want to make it something maybe
Sure,
it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't. You know, I mean, wasn't that long ago? There were a lot of places out here that were closed down. You know, there were the old Kroger. There was where 35 North is. Most people wouldn't remember the fact that there was a
old
rundown
gas station.
gas station. You had the was it Silver Spoon restaurant or whatever that was like there was a lot of empty boxes just sitting there. And, you know, now we have, like you said, if you're not growing, you're dying. We have all this nice new stuff that people get to enjoy.
I love that, and I'm an eternal optimist. I love it. I embrace it, and you know, there's virtually nothing that we don't run up against that we can't, as a community, figure out. And does it have some growing pains? Sure, but like you know, Knoxville, Knox County, town of Farragut, city of Knoxville, we've always kind of been in the awkward teenager phase, not knowing who we are and kind of always looking at other cities, like look
Yeah.
at all that cool stuff. I think we're quickly emerging out of that, going like, forget all that. Look at who we are, and we're loving it. It is coming with growing pains, but I think that's okay.
Yeah,
It's natural.
we're growing into our own identity.
Yeah, we are. We are going to be who we are, and I think that's a good thing.
Well, and that's what I think is exciting about having things like, bringing the baseball stadium
Yeah.
to Knoxville.
That is a catalyst. It's the first time that the city and the county and everyone have come together for a vision of something for the future since the World's Fair. Think about that. That's the first time
huge.
everybody's taken a risk since the World's Fair and said, we're going to take a blighted area, bring something that's going to be a catalyst for everyone in different ways, and really risk and invest in some civic furniture that is going to make our community a little bit better. That's a big deal.
And I'm excited to see how that transforms that area, the sort of finished product, but also how people utilize it.
Yeah.
And I also think it's great. I love UT. I love UT football. I tell people East Tennessee has 2 seasons. It has boat season and football season.
I have to remember that.
Yeah, because those are the 2 seasons that I enjoy the most. But also like the opportunity. I'll be honest with you. I haven't been to a baseball game. I haven't gone to watch them play in a long time because it's almost an hour drive from here.
Yeah, it is.
So just to have them downtown where a person can enjoy, maybe some dinner, watch a game,
100%.
like just to make an experience out of it. It's gonna be
You bring
awesome.
your family, and then there's soccer, and there's going to be concerts. It's going to be a big deal.
And not to mention all the people. Like I was just in a few weeks ago. I was in Boston for the first time, and we walked everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we didn't even Uber. Like we literally walked everywhere, and to be able to walk to Fenway was awesome. So I can think about all the people who will be able to just walk to and enjoy a game and make it a day.
Our downtown is so walkable. I mean, there is plenty of parking, despite what people say. There is lots of places to park around the periphery of the downtown, and get out and walk 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 blocks. Experience your community, see the shops, go have fun, enjoy it. It is an asset that most communities don't have, and we should be really proud of.
So I'm gonna ask this question because I think it leads into the next one. What motivated you to become a county commissioner?
Service has always been part of our family. I mean, it's my grandfather was a World War II Army reconnaissance vet. My dad was in the Air Force in Vietnam. I was born on Air Force Base in Texas and moved around a lot as a kid. Our family's always been involved with how do you serve your country? How do you serve your community? I grew up being a scout. I grew up helping neighbors, and when disasters would hit, we'd all run in, and it's just part of the DNA of who we are as a people, but who our family has always been. The nature to be helpful and the purpose to have something bigger than yourself is always a driving force for me. But I was never involved with politics and didn't grow up, going to clubs and doing stuff. Always voted, always been active in some regard, but it really, I think the catalyst for me was the accident I had in 2007, which led to random acts of flowers and a lot of different shifts in my life. So in the summer of 2007, I had a near fatal accident. I shouldn't be here with you today. I'm very lucky. I was a film and television producer. Ironically, that was the year that I went to Everest Base Camp on a documentary project. I went helicopter skiing on another project, and jumped out of helicopters and glaciers and did all this dangerous stuff and came back fine, and had a accident here where I had a ladder collapse out from underneath me and fell about 1.5 stories face down on concrete.
Oh, wow.
On a warehouse I owned, and was fixing the roof, and broke my left arm, left wrist, right elbow, right femur, nose, and 10 skull fractures, and just like that.
Wow.
Changed my life. 2 days at ICU at UT Medical Center, 10 days on a level 1 trauma floor, 10 days at Patricia Neal Rehab Center, 3.5 months in a wheelchair, and 15 surgeries putting me back together, and counting. And really, that was, I got to have my midlife crisis at age 33 instead of 53. And really, it shifted my perspective from success to significance. You know, when you're in your 30s, you're only, thinking about career and success and this. Really quickly, I got a second, well, really a third chance on life. I almost died one other time in college in a boating accident, which was silly, but I got a second chance on life, and so it just shifted my perspective to time and impact. And I got more involved with the community. We started the charity we founded, Random Acts of Flowers. That came out of my hospital experience.
Which I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
I think that's great. So for people who don't know,
Yeah. So Random Acts of Flowers. So when I was in the hospital, people found out about my accident, and their way of showing support was sending flowers. And most guys have never been sent flowers. I'd never been given flowers in my life. And by the end of the first week, we had a room that was a jungle of joy and happiness. And we had 30, 40 bouquets delivered on the floor, on the windowsill, in the bathroom. I mean, like literally everywhere. It changed the mood, it changed the smell, it changed the feel, it changed everything. And I kept noticing every time somebody walked in my room, I don't care if it's a janitor, a nurse, a doctor, somebody delivering food, as soon as they walked in and saw all those flowers, like they perked up and their mood perked up and they went, wow. And it changed from like stark industrial hospitalization to, wow, happiness and joy.
Right.
And by the end of the first week, I got a little stir crazy and asked my family to get me out of my room, and which took a while, to bags and casts and IVs and all kinds of stuff. And I noticed when we wheeled through the halls how many people had no flowers, no plants, no life, just empty. Yeah. And it just seemed like the right thing to do at the right time. I asked to go back. We took all the cards off my flowers. We loaded my wheelchair, and we just started making deliveries. We didn't ask for permission. We didn't follow protocol. It's just the right thing to do at the right time for the right people. And it made such a profound impact on people that had no one or nothing, to have a complete stranger come in, ask for nothing, just say, here's some flowers, have a better day, keep smiling. And that stuck with me. And it really, like those first few interactions just like blew me away. And I kept thinking, somebody must be doing this. So I had a long recovery. I had almost 6 months of really intense recovery. And I kept thinking, somebody must be doing this. It's kind of a no-brainer with all the flowers that are thrown away after weddings or grocery stores or, funerals. They use them for an hour, or, church services or, fundraisers or whatever. And nobody was. And so a year to the date of my accident, we wrote the first check, we filed our paperwork, and we started Random Acts of Flowers as a way to give back to the community, honor the fact that I got a second chance and I could do something, take garbage and turn it into smiles. And we just started. I had no idea. I thought it was something maybe we'd get up and running, and turn over to somebody else. I had done that before with other service projects. I was part of a group that started movies on Market Square, and then we turned that over to the library, to get people to come downtown. I was the founder of the ice rink on Market Square to get people to come during the holidays, and we turned that to the city. So like getting stuff up and running and then turning it over to the right people was kind of in our nature. Yeah. And I thought that was going to be the same way, and then it just took over. It took over our lives. A few years later, it sold our business, sold our company, sold our business or building downtown, and kind of went all in to nudge the world a little bit. And I'm so proud to say that Random Acts of Flowers today is approaching its 700,000th delivery to a patient in a hospital, nursing home, hospice care. We focus exclusively on healthcare facilities. We take flowers that would otherwise be thrown away after a wedding, funeral, special event, grocery store, Costco, whatever. And we recycle, repurpose those, and we find people that don't have family, don't have friends, don't have anyone, or are having a hard time mentally, emotionally. It's really a mental health charity.
Right.
And we work with the hospitals and nursing homes and stuff, and we identify the people who need it the most, and we give them a bouquet of flowers. And it's simple kindness and compassion. We don't sell them and do anything. We don't preach to them. We don't ask them to do anything. We just say, keep smiling, have a great day, hope you feel better. And we make the world a little bit better with every single room.
Okay, so that is a very, I think, Knoxville thing to do. Like I've always told people, like, this is the volunteer. Yeah. This is the volunteer state, but we are the volunteers here in Knoxville.
And we're 99% volunteer run.
I mean,
which
so
is
the amount of people that are willing to
yeah.
get involved and to do things to give back to people, even if it's a matter of just changing their energy level when they're going through a situation like that.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's awesome. I'm so excited that we've recycled over 750,000 vases, it's about almost 250,000 volunteer hours. It's now in other cities, Indianapolis, Tampa Bay, Asheville, North Carolina. They're starting to grow in different parts. I shepherded it full time for almost 13 years and then pass the torch and stay involved on the board and help support it. But it's really going back to that success to significant shift and the ability to start saying, like, how can I nudge the world? What can I do? How can I serve? It is the volunteer spirit, and I'm a seventh generation Tennessean through my Marion County days, family, and it is who we are. I've never seen a more generous, caring community than this one in all of my life, and I've been all over the world, and so embracing that, getting more involved, and as I got more involved, naturally a few people kind of said, "Hey, would you ever consider running for office?" And like most people, I said, "God, no, who would want to do that?" And I shrugged them off and watched other people go through the process. But there was a real change in about like 2016 when I realized I watched a couple of my colleagues run for office, and I realized, wait a second, I've spent all this time kind of yelling at the national level political machine, and the local is where it most affects my life. Like everybody spends all their time worried about the national election, and like most of the time it doesn't change that much, and
Right.
yet we know nothing about our local government. And I just realized how important it was on a local level. And a couple election cycles later, there was a real void in leadership, and a few people asked me if I'd consider it, and I spent like 6 months trying to like look into it, understand it better, understand what a commissioner does, all the things we're doing here today. I couldn't quite get there, and I'll give a lot of credit. My wife, I married way up. She's way smarter and way more talented than I am. Adrian is the best, and she said, "You've spent 6 months trying to convince yourself to run for office, and you can't figure it out. Tell me why you shouldn't. If not you, who? Wow. Tell me why you shouldn't. Give me 3 reasons why you shouldn't. Do you not care about this community? Do you not care about the leadership of this community? Do you not have the experience, the education, the passion? Do you not have the resources? Give me 3 reasons why you shouldn't, and or shut up and run, because I'm tired of talking about it." And so I really couldn't come up with very many reasons, and so I went from never being involved to just saying
All in.
all in, and running countywide, which I don't recommend because it was really daunting and it's a big job, but it was service. It's service on its core level of how do you step up and say, I can be helpful. It's for me, it's not about the political machine or the partisan machines or the sort of big, the muck of politics. It's about picking up that phone and saying, how can I help, or what can I do, or how do I lead, or how can we update this plan, or how can we modernize something? How do we fix a problem?
Right.
And that's how I'm hardwired and how I'm driven. And so I still love about 80% of being a commissioner, which is all of that. The muck of politics is the stuff that is like kryptonite, and you just got to stay away from it.
Right.
It's really hard. But most days and most projects, you can do a lot of really great stuff, and I'm that's the part I love.
So taking that energy that you got into being the commissioner, that term is coming to an end.
Yeah.
And you've decided to go towards Knox County mayor,
Yeah.
which taking big leaps here.
Yeah, look, I'm a all in or all out kind of guy, and I truly believe in service and leadership, and I truly believe everybody ought to find a way to serve their community and their country, whether it be through this or through military or through something, and it's a natural progression of the work I've been doing for 6 years. I represent the whole county. I've been working on projects countywide, and yes, it's a different level, but it's a level that continues to say I want to invest in Knox County, and I want to be as helpful as I can to making this place I don't want another office. I don't want another national or federal. I don't want a career in politics. I want to help Knox County, and I want to focus every minute I can on helping this community. And if people want me to stick around, I'd be honored to serve. I'll give it everything I got. And if they don't, I will be skinnier and less stressed, and that is okay too. I promise you. I've served, I think, honorably and done as much as I can as a commissioner. But yeah, I'd love the opportunity to help our community go from great to amazing.
So with that being said, at the county level, what do you say? What do you feel are some of the like top 2 or 3 challenges that Knox County is facing in the upcoming years?
I think infrastructure, going back to our growth discussion at the beginning, that is the number one. It's the number one thing that we are so far behind in, and it's the number one thing that people feel on a day-to-day basis, and that is desperately needed immediately. It's investment in that infrastructure to allow that growth. You cannot have a free flow of goods and services and people in a thriving community with clogged arteries. You can't have a healthy body
Right.
that's about to have a heart attack every single day. And we have to open up those arteries. We have to invest in real road projects. But we also have neighborhoods that have never been repaved in 30 years that people are going, what is going on? And I see it every day. I gotta go through this pothole that I've been looking at for 2 decades. Some of that's really basic. It's adding turn lanes and reconfiguring schools to get some of that traffic off the main arteries and harness it in a way that's productive but not stopping everyone else. Part of it is embracing in new ways like new transportation modals like roundabouts, which I think are really great. It's a little weird at first, but man, it keeps people moving
It does.
instead of gridlocking. And I think that we could invest in, there's small roundabouts that could be done at strategic points around neighborhoods. There's big ones at intersections. I'm sorry to say, but the Europeans have figured it out about 250 years ago, and they keep people moving in a small amount of space. We can do the same thing. So it's a lot of infrastructure on the basic level. We're so far behind in paving. It's like 90 years to catch up right now, and we need to shrink that to about 10 or 20 years to catch up.
Right.
There's little things like that, but there's also really big things. We got to be working with our state and figuring out, we have 3 of the 5 most congested areas in the state right here in this corridor. And it's mostly geographic. I mean, look, if you look at a big map and you look at the topography, we funnel everything into a little valley.
Yeah.
It's hard. We have to think about, do we go up? Do we go out? Do we work on a new regional bypass? 16% of our traffic is trucks that are just trying to go from north to west or north to south or south to west. Do we figure out a more regional bypass way to get some of that traffic alleviated? So infrastructure. I could go, literally, we could do a whole podcast on that.
and I will say, just like we were talking about Advance Knox, that planning needs to happen sooner than later because those are not quick projects.
No, we're still working on. I mean, Shad Road is the most major road project we have. Over $50 million investment. It's a corridor that goes from Callahan Road and 75 to Lovell Road.
Yeah.
And we're in it's probably 3/4 of the way done, but it's a little bit of state and a little bit of us, and it's a massive project, and it takes 15 or 20 years to do this. There's a lot of projects that we can do that take 6 months or a year, 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, but there's a lot of work that has to be done and decisions right now that will take 10 or 15 years. But if we don't start now, we're going to be that much farther behind. So infrastructure, that is the number one priority for everybody and for me.
So can I? I'm gonna ask you a budget question.
Yeah.
All right.
That's another challenge.
Because I've heard grumblings that we haven't had. So when a lot of people freaked out when we had reassessments, property reassessments.
That happens every 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And all that does is tell you what is the value of your home if you were to sell it today.
Yeah. And I would say that you should talk to your real estate agent.
Yes.
But what most people, because they come from other places, they expected their property taxes to just go through the roof because their property values went up so much over the last couple years. But that didn't happen. I mean, in fact, mine actually went down slightly.
Yeah. Because of the state equalization law.
Yes, which is a very unique law and setup that I like because it just randomly your taxes didn't vote. But
and I want to explain that for just a second because it's really important. Every 4 to 5 years, the state requires you to do a reappraisal, which means you go out and you say, what is everybody's value of their home or property worth?
Right.
And depending on the market, so you have a neighborhood that maybe have been there 30 years and the values haven't changed much, but 15 houses have sold for a premium because of growth or demand, then they look at it and say, if your house to your right is $300,000 and your house to your left is just sold for $300,000, and then you probably could sell yours for $300,000.
Right,
so the
right.
value continues to go up. Now, that doesn't change the tax rate. Now, what it does is every 4 to 5 years, the state says when you go through that process, you have to be revenue neutral at the end of the process. So if somebody's value went up high, you have to devalue somebody else's, and you have to come out neutral, because what they don't want you to do is to raise revenue by creating your own housing bubble and just inflate everybody's prices to a point of delirium. That's bad. So it's actually a pretty smart law. It says if you're going to deal with your revenue, deal with it with the one thing that we have, tax rates.
Right.
And we don't have income tax in Tennessee. We basically live and work and operate on 2 taxes: property tax and sales tax. There's a couple little small ones, motor, wheel tax, mineral tax, but like the everyday person deals with 2 things.
Right.
And so the tax rate has not changed since 1999.
Which is wild.
Yeah. So what's interesting is most people, especially in the political world, do not want to have this conversation. Never want to talk about it. I'm different in that I want to be super brutally honest with people and talk about where we are and why we have an artificially low tax rate that is actually very detrimental to us, because the political whims of the last 30 years was elect me, I'll never raise your taxes. Sounds great, right? What they haven't said is the other part, which is, but don't pay attention as I run up your debt. So Knox County has a real big debt crisis. You asked what the other challenges were?
Yeah.
We have a huge debt cliff coming pretty fast. Our 3rd largest line item in your budget of what you spend your money on, I spend your money on, is debt service. Most people don't realize that. Education is number 1, public safety is number 2. We spend $80 million a year of your money servicing the credit cards, if you will, because we didn't want to change our pricing model.
Yeah.
And it's artificially low. It's 79th out of 95 counties.
Wow.
Yeah, I was actually pulling this up for a presentation the other day. 79th out of 95 counties, and
That's not good.
no, and of the top 10 most populous counties in Tennessee, we're 10th out of 10th. Now, does anybody want more taxes? No. Does anybody want to raise taxes? No. But everyone who wants you to run government like a business, and when you do that, you should look at, you run a business. What is my cost? What are my expenses? What are my, acquisition costs for a customer? What are my HR costs? What does it cost to turn the lights on? How much do I need to make to sell and to make a business? You go through that calculation.
Right.
We should do nothing different. As a public corporation, what are our revenue? What are our expenses? How do you make sure that we are a good value for our customer, you, the citizen? But we're 10th out of 10th of the most populated counties, and what it does is it starts costing even more, because our debt is going to go from $80 million a year to over $100 million a year in just like the next 4 years, because of balloon payment debt that somebody put on us 30 years ago.
Right.
Like, we're just now starting to pay for Hardin Valley schools, the principal. We've been paying interest only for 20 years.
That's crazy.
It's crazy. So we have a huge amount of debt. Knox County has 800 and something $1 million of debt on a $1 billion budget, and our 3rd largest line item is debt. It's insane. We're the worst part about that, and this is what the challenge is. Our debt fund that we have, like a reserve fund that helps us pay for debt, is about $25 million. It's going to go to 0 in 4 years. We're kind of out of money because we've kept it so artificially low that we're not keeping up. One example of this, and again, we could do a whole podcast just on this. The price of asphalt in 1999 was $22 a ton. The price of asphalt today is $122 a ton. Now you take people, healthcare, utility costs, energy costs, goods and service. I mean, everything that we do as a county, and those rates have gone up, but our pricing model has continued to go down.
Well, I would say that
We got to have a conversation about this.
yeah, definitely. Because here's the thing: like, okay, so someone could say they're not going to raise taxes, but at some point, you have to pay the piper, and somebody's going to be the person who's like, even though they ran on, I'm not going to raise taxes. They're going to have to be in a spot.
Well, you have to have a conversation about what is the reality of where you live. We are a service company. You own a service company, and I ask people, what level of service would you say Knox County gives you right now? Do you have a grade?
I
A through F. What level of service do you believe you get from your company, Knox County government?
so okay, so that's funny. So now that I sit and think about it, like I don't really, I I don't think about what Knox County does for me. I guess a lot on a daily basis.
Okay.
I hate to say it that
They
way.
run your schools, they run your health department, they run most of your road systems,
I,
run your
I know I know what you're saying, but
library system.
I, a lot of stuff. So like a lot of stuff on a day to day for me. I mean, you're asking me personally. Like I don't utilize a lot of like those things. So I don't.
It's something to think about. And when we talk to people, we say, what level of service do you want from your company? You
Yeah.
own this company.
Yeah.
Now, did you know that you and everyone in your household owes around $2,600 in debt? Did you realize that? And it's going up significantly. I mean, like, we have to have this conversation in a productive, professional way that gets beyond the sound bites. We have to say, would you rather continue to saddle more and more debt on the next generation and bankrupt your county to a point where we can't pay for that debt? And oh, by the way, this is all during pretty good economic times. If it drops, we're really in trouble.
Yeah.
Or do we want to talk about what our pricing model is? I would like anyone to show me one business that in 25 years has not properly invested in its people, its customers, in its goods and services, its inventory, its facilities, its maintenance, and never raised their prices, and is still in business today.
Right. Right. No, I agree. I
So,
mean, I agree with you.
This is where I think we have to, and I know it's going to be hard. I know it's hard in politics to like, oh well, he just wants to do that. Well, like, no, let's have this discussion.
So-
because I don't think it's a fiscally conservative policy to bankrupt our county for sake of an artificially low rate that is subsidizing the growth and the infrastructure needed for this community.
One thing that in this is what I'm hearing you say, and I agree 100% with this, is the discussion,
Yeah.
which typically revolves around the why. Why does something need to happen? All too often we hear just the soundbite or the tagline, hey, we're going to call this, Affordable Health Care Act.
Yeah.
And we're going to just give it a quick little spiel, but we're not going to dig deep into what it. So I think being able to have that conversation and kind of lay it out, treating the citizens like investors, and giving them the ability to dig deep with you, makes it way more palatable, makes it way more it becomes understandable,
And you can translate it. I'm so glad you said that, because the citizenry can't put their head in the ground.
Right.
Our community, if you care about your company that you are an investor in, that you have debt from, that you believe in, and that you want to serve you and your community every single day, you have to have buy-in and you have to have understanding. You can't say, it's just too complicated. He'll take care of it. She'll figure it out. No, you have to have that conversation, and you have to translate it in a way that people realize. The difference is, why did the teacher that you loved so much at your school leave? Because they're making $40,000 a year and they can't live in Farragut anymore. Why did they leave? This would change that. Why don't you have more patrol officers in your neighborhood making sure that crime and safety is a top priority? That's because we can't afford to put that person on the streets. Like, why is that pothole that you've been running over for a decade still there? Right. That's the translation. And that's what I'm trying to do, is boil down and better understand what are people's priorities, but also saying, like, these are the realities of what you've chosen. This is the level of service you're getting. Is that what you want?
And I think so. I would think it people need to understand. I know I would like to know when we're talking about these is to like actually look at things in real numbers. You know, what does that look like? Because, you know, you can use numbers and say, okay, well, we need to raise $80 million or whatever. And
What's
that's
it mean to you and your household?
exactly.
And I think that's part of the next step of this conversation that I'm continuing to work on this data of, you know, for an average person, you know, in Farragut and in Halls and in South Knoxville and Lonsdale, like, what does that translate to? What does that look like? 95% of people pay their taxes through their mortgage every month automatically, and it's not a huge tax bill that comes, you know, once a year. It's a little bit over time.
Right.
What would that translate to? Is it worth you investing another, you know, $50 a year to have a better teacher and a better road, or $250 a year? And that's the part. It's hard. The mayor of Knox County proposes a budget, but the county commission adopts it and sets the rate. And so, if I was successful as, you know, the candidate for Knox County mayor, the first budget I would propose wouldn't be till, you know, fiscal year 27. Tell me what the world's going to look like, you know, 3 years from now, and I'll go to Vegas. Like,
Right.
So, you know, you can't say I will or won't do anything. Show me one person, one elected official that was sworn in on September 1st, 2001, and show me what their priorities were, and then show me what their priorities were 10 days later on September 11th.
Right.
The world will change, economics will change, and so I don't like the absolutisms of politics that say I will or won't do anything. Let me tell you how I'm going to run the business. Let me tell you how I'm going to manage the business. Let me tell you how I'm going to achieve things through the resources we have. Let me tell you how I'm going to address crisis. Let me tell you how, when it comes time, we're going to sit down and say, what do we spend our money on? What do we need to reduce or increase? What are the priorities of this county? And then what is that going to cost? That's the nuance that is hard in politics, because everybody just wants the next soundbite.
Yeah, I will 100% agree with that.
But that's why I appreciate podcasts like this. You can talk about it.
Yeah, well, you know, so I appreciate you saying that, because part of the reason why I wanted to do these podcasts was to bring up, you know, community type issues. Obviously, we're a small real estate company.
Yeah.
I see stuff, and I try to when I say stuff from my viewpoint, it's always from the real estate agent's viewpoint. To hear other people say things, you know, is very beneficial, and to get that word out. You know, there's so many things people don't know about how things run around here.
And that's okay. I don't fault people for that.
No, but the hard part is it's, you know, or not the hard part. I guess part of the reason why I want to get some of this word out is so that people do understand. For instance, you know how many people don't know what rural metro even is?
Yeah.
You know, they don't understand
and what the relationship is.
And how all that works.
Yeah.
Or the, you know, I can't tell you how many people think that the town of Farragut has a property tax.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
And it doesn't, yeah.
You know?
Look, civics education is way low. You know, and we've got to have more real conversations and educate people on the basics of what and how we run. But
that education ties into having the conversations about, like, when you talk about the budget, you start talking about everything that county government does.
Yeah, it's immense and it's complicated, and it's a massive company. It's a massive public corporation for the benefit of all, and you know, it takes a lot of digestion. I mean, that the amount of stuff that we have to do as commissioners, and you know, one second we're talking about land use policies, the next thing we're talking about, you know, public health crisis. Next thing we're talking about financial management and debt control, and the next minute we're talking about, you know, a new stadium and economic development. Like, it's unbelievable how much we have to digest in a short amount of time. And so, it's a big job, but I love the conversation, because I love talking to people about the company they didn't know they owned, and yet they really have a lot of investment in it. You know, fiscally, financially, emotionally. You know, what do you want this place to be like for your children? And if you want your children to be able to afford a home here, then you need to have more inventory to be able to have the basic supply and demand ratio thing. If you want your young people to stay here, you need more apartments to be able to have them to move into, because they are not going to buy a single family home. If you have to have intentional leadership to say, what will this community look like in 30 to 60 years? And I'm here in my time, what can I do to make sure that that is a reality?
Well, and the thing about so the thing about leadership that often I think is missed, especially in politics. We talked about sound bites. People try to get elected by saying things they think that their constituents want to hear.
Yeah.
Leadership is not about doing what everybody wants. It's about doing what you feel is best. That sometimes isn't comfortable.
No, it's often not comfortable.
And so that's the struggle, and I think is, as citizens, we need to understand that not everything is unicorns and rainbows. There has to be hard conversations, and we have to again, it's just like enjoying that farm that your neighborhood butted up against that now is becoming a neighborhood. We've enjoyed artificially low property taxes, and now maybe we may have to have a conversation of what fixing that looks like.
Things are going to continuously change, and you have to adapt to that change. If you price things like you did 25 or 30 years ago, you're in trouble. If you operate like you did 25 or 30 years ago, you're in trouble. If you have plans that you did 25 or 30 years ago and you're still relying on them, you're lost. Like, we have to constantly evolve as a community, as an organization, because that's how we make it better. And yes, leadership is very tough. It is very lonely. It is very difficult. It is very uncomfortable most of the time. And you have to, rationally sit down and say, what is the best decision for the 500,000 people that I represent? All the time. You weigh decisions. It's never good and bad. It's good and not awesome, or bad and worse, or it's a constant balancing act. But to me, I hope that the citizenry as a whole will appreciate rational, thoughtful leadership. That's all I've ever promised anybody. I'm never going to promise anybody anything that I can't deliver on or that I don't know about, other than rational, thoughtful leadership. How do you approach it every single day with the same mindset of, what's the issue? What are the options? How do we weigh those? What's the best decision? How is that going to have an impact, 20, 30, 40 years from now? And, from right here in the heart of Farragut, that development was controversial. That development,
very,
there was a zillion people that said, look at the blighted Kroger, look at the blighted property. Why isn't anybody fixing this? And then a minute somebody fixed it and came in with a proposal, it was huge pushback. And then now that it's starting to emerge as a place to live and work and have commerce, people are starting to embrace it. And now the traffic, and it's never going to be perfect, but it is progress, and it is change that we can embrace and make better. Are we going to get it right 100% of the time? No. Do you get everything right in your business 100% of the time?
No.
You just keep doing better, and if your customers keep showing up, you keep showing up with them.
Well, what's hard about stuff? So even like, Biddle Farms project that you're talking about, I feel like a small segment of the population was up in arms over it. The majority of the people, I'll be honest with you, I think the majority of people don't care,
or love it.
Yeah.
But the majority doesn't show up.
I agree.
The majority never shows up. In everything I've ever done, this is something I learned as a commissioner. I always thought, when I came in as a commissioner, I thought, oh my gosh, everybody's going to be involved. I'm going to hear from both sides. I'm going to get a lot of input. And it's absolutely not the case. The majority of people who think things are good just assume, okay, well, it's good. Just leave me alone. I'm going to go on with my daily life. They don't show up. When something comes up, usually the vocal minority is the group that shows up in mass quickly. And then you have to decide, is this representative of the whole community? Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. And so you have to say, does what outweighs the other? And is it really a big issue, or is it 5 people that think it's a big issue?
Well,
that's the hard part.
Well, and the big thing about, and I could tell you obviously get this idea. We were talking about corridors and where you want things to be for the town of Farragut. Biddle Farms makes a lot of sense because it is in the center of the town. It is, a lot of people got upset over apartments and came up with these ideas of how these thoughts of how this is going to make the center of Farragut like worse, because we're gonna have all this traffic, we're gonna have all these kids, we're gonna have all this. And yet, whenever I drive around, and I mean, I live up here on Campbell Station, I pass a large apartment complex on my way.
I lived in an apartment.
Yeah, I've
several
lived
times.
Yeah, well, it cracks me up. I'm like, this apartment complex up here is one of the few gated communities in town. It, I'm never waiting in line for people to get in and out of that neighborhood. I'm never sitting behind a school bus that's taking forever to load a bunch of kids. None of the fears are rational. They're very exaggerated.
Well, that's what fear is. Fear is the I'm going to take a perception and put it into a reality, even if the data doesn't support that. I don't care about the data. It's how do I feel, and that is a constant. I understand you feel like this, but show me where it's happened. Is crime out of control?
Exactly. Well,
no.
And the funny part about
You feel it.
If there wasn't a need, I try to tell people in today's world, they're like, okay, so why do we have a Dollar General here and we have a Dollar General down there? It's like, because Dollar General's done the math, and they figured out that they need one on both sides of the road.
Because people shop there.
Because people shop there. Why do we need more apartment complexes? Well, I mean, we may not at this point for a while because but I mean, a lot are coming online. We're starting to see, the numbers are showing that things are starting to chill out some. But we obviously needed that capacity, right? But people wouldn't build, investors wouldn't build multi-million-dollar projects if they didn't think there was a need for it.
Well, I am a huge proponent of the free market enterprise system. That's what has built this country, and that's what drives our community. And if the marketplace says the consumer does not like this type of housing, they will stop building that type of housing.
100%.
But until they don't, I don't fault anybody for wanting to have their first home be a lower price home sandwiched in between a whole bunch of other little price homes in an area that might be their best opportunity to get that first bit of equity in their lives. Like, good on you, go for it. But if they don't like smoothies, then Smoothie King, if the community doesn't want it, then the Smoothie King will go out of business and something else will take its place.
Which by the way, I like Smoothie King.
I love Smoothie King. But there will be a time where, we have had piano stores, we have had consumer markets, we have had restaurants come and go. I mean, there used to be Ruby Tuesdays on every corner until, it worked until it didn't work. And I think that is the constant of every society. The model works until it doesn't work. The model worked for telecom until it didn't work, and now we carry around a phone that can talk to space.
Right.
The model worked for you to sell houses a certain way until it didn't work. Technology changes, people change. I embrace that. I don't fight it, but I understand the irrational fear that people have of change. And what I don't understand, and this is the part I struggle with the most, is the societal shift of everything must be perfect all the time for me and my individual choice and chase. That bugs me.
Yeah.
Like, we are a neighborhood, we are a society, we are a community, we work on behalf of everyone. I don't make decisions based on your inconvenience factor on a minute by minute basis for how you live your life. I can't do that, and it's not appropriate because one, I represent 500,000 people, but two, it's not all about you, it's all about us.
Right.
And that's the shift, I think, in our society that I'm wondering if it might come back a little bit.
And that's part of that, that it's that part of the reason why I think a lot of people moved here was for that, but they don't understand that the community, people move to the South. Why? Because we're slower paced, because we're nicer, we use our manners.
So why don't you use your manners and be nicer and slow down a little bit?
And it's like, so when you move here, so if that's what attracted you, learn to adapt some to it.
I heard something the other day. Somebody said, we love refugees, we really don't like missionaries. So, well, come on in. we'd love for you to be part of our community. But if you're going to show up and tell us how it was done in California,
Right.
I'm not really interested in
Right.
like, you came here for a reason. Embrace this community and yes, be a part of it, but don't walk in and tell us how to run it on day one. Why don't you enjoy it, embrace it, engage with it, be part of our community first?
The interesting, obviously.
But I love them coming. I
yeah.
love
Well,
the diversity of people.
Well, and
I love it.
I will tell you, we've sold a bunch of homes to a lot of people who moved from California. We've met some great people.
There are awesome people.
I will say though, I feel that some of them were so tired of the way it was there that they anticipate that things will happen here that way, and they're like,
And they're just not.
they're just, yeah, and they're like very guarded. No, I don't want that. No, I don't want that. No, like it's very interesting to see, because those are some of the loudest people in this neck of the woods right here in Farragut are people that moved here from California, and they're telling people that have lived here all their lives how they should live. It's very interesting.
Or how terrible it's going to get if you do X, Y, and Z.
Z.
And you're like, okay, just relax,
And
relax.
and-
We are the most welcoming place in this nation.
It's about the culture.
Yeah.
It's about the people.
Yeah.
The buildings will change. The streets will change. The cars on them will change.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it comes down to the people. It's why I moved here.
Yeah.
I'm originally I'm a transplant from Florida. I grew up in Central Florida. I lived in Western North Carolina for a few years. I lived in Asheville. Loved it. Moved back to Florida. 6 years later, I lived in Ocala. 6 years later, I was like, all right, I don't know why I'm still here. At that time, I was already. So this is how life changes. At that time, I went from working in the trucking industry to being a real estate agent. So being an entrepreneur, understanding more about, you don't really realize how taxes impact your life until you actually are writing a check to the IRS. But found myself saying, like, hey, you know what? I don't golf. I don't hunt. And I don't own any horses. Why am I in Ocala? 'Cause those were like the three things.
Oh yeah, I've been there.
So I was like, I want to move back to this region because I loved the people that I was with in Asheville. That's where I got on with Averett Express. I met some just great people.
Community matters.
But then I realized that, like, I don't want to be a slave to tax. Like, I already knew the difference in taxes between one side of the mountain and the other side of the mountain.
Yeah.
And I heard about this place called Knoxville. I'd been to Knoxville briefly, but I had never been to Knoxville. So, at that time, we made the trip up, stayed for a week. I mean, this is 2007, so very different from today. But, we stopped and talked to people and got the idea, the lay of the land, kind of like, oh, this is where the schools are, this is where, this is, and all of that stuff. Went back, put the house up for sale, and moved. And I have no regrets because the community that we have here is amazing. It's exactly what I moved here for.
And it is very diverse. It's very interesting. It's very full of people from literally all over the world, which I love about East Tennessee. It is the crossroads of our country, if not our nation. And I mean, nationwide and worldwide, we have so many people from so many different places. I think that's the good part about it. And I truly do believe that the majority are great people who embrace and welcome others and find a fabric. I've been here 31 years and a seventh generation, Tennessean, and I'm still not from here. I get that, but at the end of the day, we're all from here. We have all chosen this as our home, and we're all going to work on things together. And when the silent majority shows up, eventually that will change. But until then, the vocal minority almost always sort of starts to drive the boat a little bit. But that's why leadership matters. That's why who you elect matters. That's why who you invest in matters. This is your company. This is your public company in your community. And that's why I think service is so important. And so you can't sit on the sidelines and say, it's going to be okay. that somebody else will figure it out. You got to show up. You got to be part of it. And it pains me to know that Tennessee is the last in the country in voting participation. Last, 51st behind D.C. and 50 states. Somehow we have got to reignite that civic engagement to a point where people realize that it's not okay to just go, it's good enough. Like, it's not good enough. Get involved. I mean, do the basics. Like, but understand it. And that's why I talk to Boy Scout and Girl Scout troops about the basics of government. I love talking to different groups about who we are and what we do as commissioners. One of the great things that I can look at as an accomplishment that I have been so proud of is our junior commissioner program that I started a couple of years ago, where each year every commissioner picks a junior or senior in one of our area high schools, public, private, or parochial, and they sit alongside us for like a 3-month boot camp of being a junior commissioner, going with us to events, sitting on stage, making votes with us, understanding it. It's a direct sort of civics leadership youth engagement program, and we're going to enter our 3rd year of that. And it's awesome because they have such a different perspective than we do, and they love, this next generation is about impact. It's not about stuff. It's not about social media. I promise you, this next generation is about what's my place in the world and what am I making a difference in.
That's pretty awesome.
So super cool. So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. So, start to wrap this up. Is there anything else you want to say to whoever's listening at this point in the pod, like as you ramp up for this election, as you wind down your seat as county commissioner, what's one thing you would like to leave them with?
I think I'd like to remind people that it can be done. It can, whatever it is, it can be done. You can nudge this community in an impactful way. And I am one of 100 people that I could cite that can say, this is what we've done and this is what we've accomplished to make it better. And those aren't always political leaders. They are often civic leaders or business leaders. But you asked me, what are the accomplishments that I could look at and say, this is what I have achieved as your county commissioner. And I listed them out, and this is all in 6 years. Establishing the junior commissioner program for civic leadership amongst our youth, establishing and running the Knox Education Foundation Play Space Fund to make sure that every public school has a great and safe playground that doesn't have to be fundraised by the parents and the students. North Shore Greenway Corridor, establishing Callaway Ridge Trailhead, the park pedestrian access through the park, on the boardwalk, getting people off of North Shore so they don't die, and creating a corridor where 25,000 people can enjoy their parks in the North Shore corridor safely. Historic raises and investment in our sheriff's deputies and our law enforcement professionals, helping work through that with the sheriff and the mayor. Raising money and supporting for our veteran services, Smoky Mountain Service Dogs, our veteran engagement teams, the Beaver Creek Water Trail cleanup and the initiative to bring back, to reduce flooding, bring back water quality and recreation to the entire north side of Knox County. Establishing the state of mental health in Knox County report and a new environmental scan, going through the Advance Knox process and helping drive a 30-year planning process, modernizing the commission office, doing a Knox Jobs video series. I could just keep going for days. Like, these are all things in 6 years that I can look back and say, as your commissioner, not only did I help lead and make the right decisions, but these are things I can tangibly say I did and left an impact on the community. Everyone can do that. And you don't have to be an elected official, but you have to show up and say, you know what, I have an idea to make this better. Right. And I guarantee you this community will help you. We are not so small that we don't have the resources, and we're not so big that you get swallowed up. You can say, I want to nudge this community by doing this or making this better, and you can do it, but you got to show up.
Yeah.
That's my biggest takeaway.
I agree. There's like I said, this is volunteer country. I mean, there's enough people here that can definitely get behind a cause or a mission. So if you want to, impact some change on the area in a positive way.
Yeah. That's the positive way is part. I'm attracted to people that say, I have a way to make it better, and here are some ideas. Let's work together to improve a situation. I really don't have a lot of tolerance for people of, look how bad it is, you're all terrible, it's all going to hell. and I have no ideas to fix it, but everybody else is to blame. Like, no, stop.
Right.
Tell me what the issue is. Tell me what your idea is. Tell me how we can make this community, because every one of these ideas, I mean, I drove right by it today. The corner of Campbell Station and Kingston Pike was terrible looking, with an old house and a scrub yard behind it, and the mayor and a few people, the aldermen and a few leaders said, we have a vision for making this a better place and a space that we can all use. And they did it. And it's beautiful. And it's an asset for generations. You can do it, but you got to show up.
I will say it's unfortunate the amount of, okay, so those loud voices that they want to ridicule everything. I've seen the change.
Yeah.
Like, I've been here long enough to
Farragut
see
is
the
a
change.
better place today than it was 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
It is amazing when you really kind of sit back and look at it. And if you're one of those people that, like, if you don't have anything nice to say, it's like, and I understand not everything's perfect. Like you said, not everything's perfect.
Yeah. And I get it. The growing pains are here. We're going to get through them. But if you show up, if you're respectful, if you're professional, and if you find a way through, even if we disagree, we're all going to, be on a better, we're going to make this community better a little bit at a time. It's not going to happen overnight, but nothing ever good happens quickly and easily and cheaply. You've got to show up and invest in your community. And sometimes that's time, and sometimes that's treasure, and sometimes it's just talent.
I like it. I like it. Larsen, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
As I sit here and I look at what you have online, obviously people can check you out at larsenj.com.
Yeah, and I do a digital newsletter once a month where I report to you. I work for you and 500,000 people, and I have a digital newsletter that goes out once a month that says, here's what I did on your behalf, and here's things that I think are important.
And if you go to larsenj.com, there's a spot to sign up right there.
Super easy. I don't sell your information. I don't give it away. I don't spam with a bunch of stuff. I just say, here's what's relevant in Knox County government.
So that's a great way to. It looks like you got your phone number on there and everything.
Yeah,
so
there's no reason you shouldn't be able to get a hold of me.
that's awesome. Well, again, I appreciate your time. I've really enjoyed this time. I like your take on things going forward. The open and honest communication. I think that's a big part of it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to have that open dialogue. The same thing I said when I first ran for office and today is I guarantee nothing, and I will never promise you, and I will never lie to you about something that I know anything about. I offer rational, thoughtful leadership and an opportunity to make things better, and I hope that's a commodity that people are interested. I hope brutal honesty and good discussion is something that people are interested in. There's 100 people that'll sell you something that means nothing.
Right.
I'm just not one of those people. So I appreciate this opportunity because we get a chance to kind of dig into the details. It's a great podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And with that being said, I think we're gonna wrap up and
Awesome.
hope maybe there'll be an opportunity as we get closer. I mean, obviously there's some time between now and
it's 2026, so we got time.
And as you said, things will change, so there'll be new things to talk about. So I'd love to have you back on the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you. And for the rest of y'all still listening, thanks for listening to the podcast. Again, I'm Eric Whitener, broker owner of the Knox Fox Real Estate Group. And if you got some great information, if you enjoyed this podcast, do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, share, do all the fun stuff that social media enjoys. That way more people can listen to this and learn more about it. And I appreciate your support. Until next time.